friend of sinners. Jesus is a friend of sinners. He hung out with the sinners. And the religious group and the religious people could not stand him. And then we went into week 2 and 3, and we talked about how Jesus is grace. Jesus is grace. And when we say grace, it's such an elegant word. It's such an amazing word. It's such a powerful word. And we talked about the prodigal son, and we talked about just how we need God's grace, and His grace is sufficient, and how grace fulfilled the law. And then week 4, we talked about Jesus is the point. Jesus is the point of living. And Jesus challenged us to come to Him for rest. And then not for physical rest, but spiritual rest. And we have to stop trying to earn grace, because we could never earn something that's always given to us. And so, in here, I think a lot of us in here, we try to pursue happiness. We try to pursue joy in something. And the pursuit of happiness, this is what Thomas Jefferson says, the pursuit of happiness is an inalienable right given by our Creator. And what that word means, because at first I was like, an inalienable right. And I was reading this and I was like, what does that even mean? And so I figured you guys might have the same question. So I looked up the definition, and inalienable means something that cannot be taken away. So joy and happiness is given by your Creator. It is something that cannot be taken away. And so I would agree with Thomas Jefferson on that part. See, with desiring happiness, peace, and joy, that's not wrong. A lot of people go, you're searching for happiness. You're never going to find happiness. But see, we can search for happiness. And it's where we pursue it and how we pursue it is the important part. And so today, we're going to be looking at Jesus is happy. That's the title of tonight's message. Jesus is happy. And that when we hear Jesus is happy, do you kind of go like, when I say that, kind of like when I first did, when I was looking at it, I was like, Jesus is happy. That just sounds like, you know, I just think of happy and I'm like, okay, Jesus, you think happy? That's weird. That's weird to even think about. Raise your hand if you just thought, like, Jesus is happy. I kind of thought that. Just being honest with you guys. I was, but I think it came from my portrayal of Jesus. I read the scripture and I see Jesus, but when I first became a believer, I could look at it and I go, you see these pictures of Jesus. What is he always doing? Jesus is smiling? With a child? Okay. When you go, you see, serious pictures of Jesus. Growing up, I always saw serious pictures of Jesus. In fact, when I walk into Danielle's grandma's house, there's a picture of Jesus, and we don't really know what he looks like, but there's a picture of Jesus, and he's like, and he just looks like he's staring into your soul. And I think that's what a lot of people think. They just think that Jesus is like that serious, that ultimate stare. And I don't think he's like that. Jesus is happy. Happy. Jesus is happy. And so for example, my right to happiness, I just want you to know this, my right to happiness can't deprive you of your right to happiness. Most of us are pretty decent people, and we're decent enough, and we don't like to step over anyone else to achieve our goals. Some of us might be like that, some of us might not. But we've looked in all the wrong places. And so like last week we talked about Solomon, and how he searched and searched and searched, but could never find true happiness until he found God. And he said that everything else seemed to appear meaningless. And when we search for like Solomon did, we become discouraged in life. And so happy is not really as elusive as people think, as long as we have the right starting point. And so Jesus is happy. True happiness can only be found in anything unless it's first found in God. Did you get that? True happiness cannot be found in anything else unless it is first found in God. God wants you to be happy, but you first have to be joyful in God. Because when that is in place, you will find joy in everything else. There is something that we often miss, but they go hand in hand together. And that is Jesus and joy. Jesus and joy. And so, if y'all have those Bibles, I want y'all to go ahead and turn to Luke 2. Luke chapter 2, 1 through 20. Sorry, I got a little distracted because I stole my daughter's binky, and nursery is probably not going to be excited for me, so you go there. Okay, cool. I reached in my pocket and I was like, sorry. And then I got to get one more thing because I want to go ahead. I really liked what Heather did last week about giving out verses. And so I put my phone somewhere. Oh, cool. Great. And I'm going to give y'all these verses. Were you using it? No. Okay. I want to give some verses out that we're going to be going through because I really like the fact that she gave it out and y'all read it. And so I've got to go and get them for y'all. And so the first one that we're going to look at, not look at, but I'm going to pass down. Go ahead, Matthew 19, 13 through 14. Somebody, Destiny, okay? Next one is Hebrews 1, 9. Tristan? Matthew 5, 3 through 10. Taylor? All right. Isaiah 52, 7. Abby? 1 Corinthians 9, 20 through 22. Miss Lisa? All right. We got a lot. I saw you. You don't raise y'all's hand. Nehemiah 8:10. Nehemiah 8:10. Shelby? All right. Ephesians 2, 8 through 10. Maya, you almost raised your hand, so you just getting the sign one now. And then I'll do the last three. So yeah, Ephesians 2, 8 through 10. Cool. All right. So those of you who probably have raised your hand, you probably have turned off Luke 2, verses 1 through 20, and we're not really looking for those, but I want you to search through there. Because generally when we read these passages, we read them during Christmas because it tells about the birth of Christ. But in this passage, we see something that is the nature of God in the gospel. And it talks about happiness and bringing good news. And can you find that in verses 1 through 20? Just do a quick skim for me and see if you can find that verse. I'll give you a hint. So, go for it. Yeah, Luke 10, 1 through 20, but your hint is. What does that say?
I got it.
All right.
It's Luke 2:10, right?
Yep. What's it say?
But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people." For all people.
Wow. I have great news. I bring good news. I bring good news. The angels are bringing good news. Bringing good news. And it's going to bring great joy. And so Jesus and joy go hand in hand. And there's always been a package deal. And it's not just something, your average joy, but it says, and it's going to bring great joy. Great joy. Good news comes from the Greek word evangelion. And it can be translated gospel or preach. And it's the root word of, can you guess what? Evangelism. Evangelism, yeah. So in other words, the gospel is by nature good news. So the answer to where happiness is found is not taking a vacation, it's not reading a book, it's not taking a nap, or eating a great meal. It is the gospel. That is the good news. That's where joy can be found. It can answer your joy problem that you're having, and that is the good news. And so that bothers a lot of people. It bothers a lot of people because they can't imagine happiness and God going together. They think religion and fun are fundamentally opposed, and that God is just some cosmic party pooper, and he's a Grinch who stole Christmas, and he doesn't care. He's somebody that's just going to judge, and he's rude, and he's mean, and Christians are mean. In fact, I'm going to jump off into this thing. I normally don't respond on anything on Facebook, so if I ever get on and respond, it's a miracle. But I saw somebody that I went to school with, and they asked a question, and I'm not really going to talk about the question they asked, but they asked the question, and I responded. And all through those comments, I noticed that they all seemed to fit in one category, that God was a judge, that God was some rude person, and they know this by the way their people act. And I had to respond, and my response was more of, I'm sorry that you feel this way. The world has changed the way the word Christian, what it actually means. And I said, I apologize about that. And I said, even though I can't take full responsibility for their actions, I can tell you that God is love. And I said, I do the best that I possibly can, that is love. And so we talked, and I just mentioned it, and after that, I can tell you that he went from 100 comments to 2,000 comments within 30 minutes after my response. And I'm not sure if it was due to my response or just because of his question, but Facebook shut it down immediately. Why was that? Because I believe that God was about to do something miraculous there, and they had to shut it down because it was going to go out of control, or it was going to go too far, and it was going to cause this media thing. But whatever it was, I can tell you that these people were searching for happiness, and they were trying to find it in the world, but they couldn't find it. And so the only people they had to blame was the Christians that weren't acting like Christians. So my word to you today is to encourage you to live like one. Another story is, I was riding in the car with a work friend, and I might have told y'all this before, but he asked me, he's like, man, you're a Christian. And I was like, oh, hold up, no, I'm not. And he was like, huh? But you're a youth director, or you're a youth pastor. And I was like, yeah, I understand. He's like, and you go to a Baptist church. He's like, how are you not a Christian? And I was like, because Christian has become a negative connectivity in this world. I'm just going to use the definition to define me. I'm a Christ follower. And that kind of, he was like, kind of like bounced back for a little bit and was like, oh, okay. And then it kind of paused and got that awkward silence. But my point is we have to live like Christians. And when we're living like Christians, we're gonna find true happiness. We're gonna find true joy. But the part of the problem is, like I mentioned earlier, most of our image, we get this image of Jesus, and it's the portrayals of him we see, and most of them, he looks unhappy. When you see these photos, he looks like very stressed, and he never seems to be smiling in some of the photos that I've seen, but that wasn't Jesus. If that portrayed him, why do the kids run to him? The kids ran to him. Have you ever met somebody who's just like this all the time? Look, and then you ever talk to, like, there was this old guy who was really nice. He really was. But he was, back in the day, he was a smoker, and he had a very raspy voice, and he was old, so his face started sagging a little bit. So he always looked like he was frowning, and his face was always like this. And so, I mean, but the reason I'm saying that is because when someone talks like this, you kids, you guys are real nice. You think kids are going to run to them? No, right? They don't just run to them for joy. But Jesus was a smiling fool who loved to smile. He loved to smile. He loved people. And he was smiling all the time. And when you smile, who likes you? Kids, people in general tend to flock to you because you're smiling. You're happy. That's awesome. That was Jesus. Kids don't like creepy and unhappy, grumpy people. They just don't. Yeah, we read scripture, and where the disciples got so tired of the kids running to Jesus that they tried to forbid it. And he was like, no, no, no. And so if you have Matthew 19, 13 through 14, can you read that for me? Matthew. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Then the little children were brought to him, that he might put his hands on them and pray. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven.
All right. See, they tried to forbid them. And Jesus says, well, hold up now. Let the little children come to me and don't forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Man, that's good. And then Hebrews 1:9.
Hebrews 1:9. You have loved righteousness and hated lawlessness. Therefore God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions.
Yep, you got it. Perfect. See, Jesus loved to spread joy and happiness. And to some people, the thought of Jesus laughing seemed irrelevant, like happiness meant he wasn't holy. God and Jesus are one. God inspired the Bible, and the Bible is full of words like joy, rejoice, blessings, happiness, peace, and the list goes on. And then we have Matthew 5, 3 through 10.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Man, these are the Beatitudes. And blessed means happy. Authentic faith produces happiness, enjoyment, and blessings. And these verses right here, you know what they should do to us? They should give us happy feet. Happy feet. We need to have happy feet, you guys. We need to go out and share the gospel. We need to be proud to share the gospel. And we need to go out there and do it with a joy, with happiness on our faces. Isaiah 52:7.
How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns.
Wow. Those that are willing to share the gospel are described having beautiful feet, happy feet. They bring good news. Man, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who shares the gospel. See, as pastors, our primary purpose is declare the good news. And most of us, we tend to, we're afraid to preach too good of good news, or too good of a gospel. We don't want to teach all about the good stuff and not talk about we don't want to talk all about good stuff because we want to make sure that you know about your sin. We want to make sure that you understand that you are a sinner, which is great. But the other day, me and Danielle were reading a book, and in this book, it said something so profound that I've never thought of it this way. But sometimes we look at these things, and so we have the good news, and we try to dull it down with sin. But sometimes I think we focus so much on the sin that we completely forget about the good news. And if we talked more about the good news and more about the goodness, then we wouldn't have to focus so much on the sin part. And to me, that was so profound. If we started focusing and really honing in on the goodness, and stop focusing and preaching all about the sin, then maybe we would have more people come to Christ. Now, I'm not saying that we should never talk about sin, but I am saying that sometimes maybe we focus on it a little too much. And so what we do is we feel as we have to have this balance, the good and with the bad, so people don't get too comfortable. So what they do is they preach about sin and the craftiness of the devil, and they spend so much time on these points, they rush through the ending where God saves the day, and it's all about the good news. You ever notice that? Most of the time we talk about, and this is where a lot of people will come into the church and we'll talk, and it's all about, or not here all the time, but I've been to a few churches where it's, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner. God came and saved the day right at the end. Like it's like a just kind of like side note, like they throw it in there and then they're like, all right, open the altar, come down. And it's like, what happened? Like, why did you not explain the best part about it? I mean, that's the highlight. It's the very end. But you see, the Bible, it's not like this. We think of the Bible like ups and downs. But really, when Jesus came on the scene, it was nothing but an uphill from there. You ever seen one of those graphs you're doing in school? And you got to go like up here and down here and down here. That's our life. But for Jesus, when he came on the scene, it just went straight like that. And it hasn't dropped yet. See, we too often we forget to present the good news in such a way that we scare people off, and then we wonder why they don't want anything to do with Jesus. Preaching the gospel with a lack of joy indicates there's a problem with your gospel. And I don't want to be a person who cares more about whether you smoke or do drugs or you're just a habitual sinner. You know what? I just want you to know that I love you. I just want you to know that I want you to feel loved. When you come in here, I don't want you to feel like, I don't think I should be here. I always tell you about my friend Chris, and I'm like, he never wants to come into a building because he's like, the building's going to fall down when I come in. And I'm like, hey, Chris, I still text him like every week or every other week. I'm like, you should come listen to my sermon tonight. I'm not stepping in the building, Austin. You should come. And I'm like, I'm not going to stop. And he's like, okay, one day I will come. And I said, well, that one day needs to be soon. Because, I want him to come. And he knows. He knows that he can come to me with any problem, with anything that he's ever done, and I won't judge him because I love him and I want him to understand that. And I think we all need to have that attitude, even towards the people that we can't stand the most. And so we need to make sure that when people come in, that they realize that they don't have to be cleaned up before they feel comfortable in church. See, that's the gospel. That's the good news for everyone, whosoever. Not just for those who are already good or have all their stuff together. It's for people just looking for acceptance from Jesus. And then we have 1 Corinthians 9, 20-22.
And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without law, as without law, not being without law toward God, but under law toward Christ, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I become all things to all men, that I might be by all means save some.
Man, that ending part is awesome there. I have become all things to all men, that I might be by all means save someone. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and become a drug dealer so you can save a drug dealer, but I am saying that sometimes we got to make sure these people feel welcome. They feel loved. That's what we got to really look towards. This may be a little foreign and a little anti-Baptist, but I believe before we even tell them about Jesus, we have to make sure they know they belong first. Sometimes you got somebody that walks through the building and they've never been to a church before, and you go, Jesus loves you. No. And you're just like attacking them with everything, and they're like, you know what they do? They slowly withdraw, like, whoa, this is exactly what I thought church was about. But I don't think we host that kind of environment here. That's the best thing about it. But I think there's an opportunity, if it's not pointed out, that we eventually could go that route. And that's something that I fear. And so we need to tell them about Jesus. And telling them about Jesus is important. But once we grasp the idea that the goodness of God is for everyone, I don't think we won't be able to not tell them about Jesus. I promise you that it is way more appealing to someone than force-feeding them a set of rules and expectations. Because force-feeding them religion without making them feel accepted doesn't change anyone. In fact, if it does change them, it changes them into a religious fanatic. And that's not what we need. We don't need more religious people. We need more Christ followers. And so, if they haven't met Jesus, they also haven't met joy. And so, Nehemiah 8:10.
Nehemiah said, "Go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks in season. For those who have nothing to prepare this day is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength."
Awesome. Do not sorrow, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. The joy of the Lord. The joy of the Lord is your what? The joy of the Lord is your what? The joy is your Lord. The joy of the Lord is your what? The joy of the Lord is your what? The joy of the Lord is your. All right. See, one of the most misquoted verses in the Bible is Psalms 51:12. And it says this, restore restore to me the joy of my salvation. I'm glad y'all trusted me that because I totally misquoted that on purpose. It actually is misquoted that way. It says, restore to me the joy of my salvation. It doesn't say my salvation. It says, restore to me the joy of your salvation. Of your salvation. It's a constant joy that comes with His gospel message. It's His joy that He gives to us, which gives us the comfort of knowing that God is with us and for us. And so that's my next point. God is with us and He's for us. And so I want to let y'all know, like, the first time I came up here, and the first time I ever preached, I was like really nervous, on top of I knew I had to do really good because I wanted to make sure that I impressed you. And so I did it the best I possibly could, and the best I possibly knew how. I studied, I took some time. Man, I studied for like 2 or 3 weeks, from at least what I remember. It was a long time. And so I came up here and I tried to impress you guys. And I think that sometimes we're like that as well. But we're not trying to just impress people. We're trying to impress God. And it's funny to imagine God looking down at us after we get done doing a good deed. And we're like, we think He's up there going, talking to His angels going, hey, look, did you see that? And I hate to tell you, but God's not doing that. Because we spend too much time trying to impress God and forget that whatever we can do, He can do way better with a more pure motive. The only way to impress God is to trust in Jesus, because the only way to impress God is Jesus. When you place your trust in Him, you are wrapped up in Him. So when God sees you, He sees Jesus. And God doesn't critique us at all. One of the best things about the gospel is that it doesn't involve our efforts. It was all Him. Part of the problem, though, is we think that about ourselves way too much. We obsess over our weakness and our deficiencies, and the more we obsess over them, the more we continue in them. There isn't a 12-step program to reaching God in the gospel. It's because God is reaching us and bringing us into a relationship. That's what it is. And I want to read this slowly. Y'all ready? Religion is about behaving the right way. We don't want to be religious. Religion is about behaving the right way, leading you to believe that you belong. But the gospel is the complete opposite. It is about recognizing you belong, which leads to believing, which leads to behaving. And so Ephesians 2, 8-10.
God saved you by His grace when you believed, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago.
Awesome. If you look at those verses, we see that first comes grace, then comes belief, then comes good works. Do you get that? We first must experience grace. And when we experience that grace, we then have this baby called belief. And this belief baby becomes good news. Y'all got that? So too many people and some pastors are teaching that good works has to come first or we'll never belong. And that we have to impress God or He will not accept us. If our faith centers around, I obey, so I'm accepted, then joy is snapped right out of it. What is the joy in believing I'm accepted because I behave? That's how culture works. People try to do enough to impress God, and when they blow the first opportunity, they get mad and spend the rest of their walk feeling guilty and trying to compensate for that first time. How many of you have ever done that? Dwell on something that you've made a mistake on, and it just sits, and you sit there, and it's been months, and you're like, golly, I can't believe I did that. But really, you could have moved on, and you could have impacted somebody's life. It's okay to dwell on something that you do, but don't let it distract you from the ultimate goal, from sharing the gospel. God doesn't want us to make our relationship with Him, about our efforts at holiness. He wants us to enjoy life. And sin, it comes into our life and it tries to ruin it. And the devil, he comes in and he tries to kill it. But God comes down and He restores it. Out of His own initiative, on His own righteousness, He saved us. That is the good news. We need to live that way. And when we live that way, we also need to make sure that we're living it happily and holy. So happy and holy is my last point. And so it's ridiculous to think that we would want to continue to disappoint the one we claim to love more than any other. So if you're a follower of Christ and you're saying that you are and you're claiming that you are, it's ridiculous to think that you would want to disappoint the one who you claim to love more than anybody else. And then I said I'd have Romans 6, 1 through 2. And it says, what shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Certainly not. How should we who died to sin live any longer in it? God's commandments are motivated by His desires for our happiness and His desire to protect us. When we follow the true gospel, even God's commands and restrictions bring joy to our hearts. When we stop being insecure about our performance and instead trust in Jesus and the finished work of Jesus, we are free to live a new kind of holiness. And then the second to last verse is 1 John 5, 3 through 4. It says, for this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Our faith. The gospel is good news because it can be summed up in the phrase with God with us. Matthew 1:23, it says this, behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. It's ironic that the first people to hear about the birth of Christ are shepherds. Why? Because they were incapable of filling the ceremonial law. And they could not wash often enough to actually perform the law. And so the shepherds were despised by religious people. And they could not, because they couldn't completely fulfill the law, even though they were Jewish people. Yet the angel came down. He came down and to those who could not fulfill the law and told them that someone has come to fulfill the law for them. It must have blown the shepherds' minds that the angel had come to them. To appreciate the significance of the phrase, God is with us, you have to understand that they lived in a time when God was not readily accessible like He is today. They lived in a time where they had to perform these ceremonial laws. They lived in a time where it was good, but it wasn't great like we have it. God came down and He fulfilled the law with grace, and His graces continue to be poured on us. And we have that opportunity to accept it. We have that opportunity to have a relationship with Him. We have an opportunity to hear the good news and respond. And the good news is that we can have a relationship with Christ by simply saying, I believe and I am messed up, and realizing that you are a sinner, but also realizing that God is the good news. His Son, Jesus, was sent to die for you, and that He was born and raised again on the third day, and He saved you. And that opportunity is there, and there is just waiting for you to open the door. And all you have to do is open that door tonight. And so I want to close, and I know we're just right at 8:05, so we're gonna close in a song. But before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and ask that we dim the lights, and we're going to go from there and pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for everything that you do, Lord. I pray that you bless us and watch over us and guide us, that you keep us safe in this weather, Lord, but also that you take this message, Lord, and that you apply it to our hearts, that we leave tonight impacted by the good news, and that we leave tonight impacted by the gospel. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. Feel free to stand and worship.